So it's not a secret that I had a near-death experience, right? I talked about it at my sentencing. And when you have that experience and you go to the other side of the veil, you understand, you have a life review. You see your whole life, everything that happened to you. And you see what's important and what's unimportant. And you see what matters in life. So what matters in life is how you react to things, how you treat other people, and the love that you give while you're here on earth. And that's it.
So you felt not
That's
reacting was the best call in that moment?
No, I felt like I should have joy in every situation, which is what I was taught to do in heaven.
Well, hey, folks, in a recent interview, Lori Vallow Daybell sat down with True Crime Arizona after being convicted of conspiracy to commit murder of Charles Vallow. Now, she wasn't just giving an interview, she was executing yet another move in her long, calculated game of controlling the narrative. But this time, she's playing with a lot fewer chess pieces, and I think she's putting more nails in her proverbial coffin. Well, hey, folks, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm glad you're here. And before we dive into this crime story, do me a quick favor. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And make sure that you turn on the notifications so that you don't miss a single update when we drop new content. So please share us with your friends. At Profiling Evil, we try to do things a little differently by going beyond the headlines, digging deeper into criminal behavior, investigative strategies, and the hidden patterns that other people often miss. So thanks for being part of this amazing community. And now let's just get started with this case. Hey, I'm sitting here in Istanbul, Turkey. The business owners are starting to come out and get ready to go to work here. Now I'm going to tackle this one a little differently because I am so tired of Lori Daybell. But this is kind of like a horrible car crash on the freeway. So I'm going to break this down by using language that she might understand. But instead of following her religious ideology and mocking biblical principles, I'm going to change this to the 10 abominations. So let's start with the first abomination, which starts with Lori's overarching strategy, which I believe is to preach the gospel of Lori Daybell. Now, out of reverence to her four previous husbands, I'm going to quit using all their last names when referring to her. But she and Chad now deserve one another. So let's start with Lori's religious framing of this interview with Brianna Whitney, which was immediate and relentless. You see, within 2 minutes of the interview, she launched into her near death experiences, her life review, and what she learned on the other side of the veil. Notice that she didn't talk about the crimes she's committed. She didn't talk about Charles. She didn't talk about the evidence. She talked about heavenly mandates and how she was taught to have joy in every situation. Joy that I would suggest came from committing murder. This is Lori reframing her behavior as divinely justified. She doesn't just say, hey, I stayed calm because heaven taught me to react with joy. I mean, think about that. She talked about heavenly mandates and how she was taught to have joy in every situation. Joy that I'd suggest even came with committing murder. Now, she doesn't say, quote, hey, I stayed calm because I was guilty and I didn't want to react. But instead, she says, I stayed calm because heaven taught me to react with joy. To me, that's powerful and chilling. It's spiritual bypassing 101, the ability to dodge accountability by cloaking it in religious righteousness. So, what is Lori really doing here? She's positioning herself as a spiritually superior person over her accusers. She's suggesting that mortal laws are irrelevant compared to her eternal laws, and she's setting up future arguments if she's convicted again. Now, sure, she might be guilty here on earth in her mind, but not in heaven. So, for those of you who have tried to make this thing a thing of her former faith or any faith, I found this information that I wanted to share. You see, in the Bible, Paul counseled Titus in Crete to teach the saints to obey the law of the land and set a good example. Now, I'm going to be in Greece tomorrow, and this thing it really hit me very powerfully. You see, also in that Latter day Saint canon of Scripture, it clearly spells out, let no man break the laws of the land. For he that keepeth the laws hath no need to break the laws of the land. And so throughout their doctrine, it encourages people to support freedom and rights. And with that, the first of my 10 abominations of Lori Daybell is, thou shalt not cloak thy crimes in righteous religion. From the very first words out of her mouth, Lori turned her murder conviction into a Sunday school lesson, preaching joy, life reviews, and heavenly mandates while dodging earthly accountability. Remember, she said, I was, quote, taught in heaven to have joy in every situation. I think her translation, even murder trials are just a vibe if you think you're doing the divine thing. Well, the second abomination deals with her legal strategy. The blame the system, not the crime strategy. Lori spent a huge portion of this interview explaining why she didn't put on her defense or call witnesses. She claimed that the system precluded her from presenting a defense. She alleged that the judge, the prosecution, the courts all stacked the deck against her, and she hinted at vast, unforeseen forces that were controlling everything from money, jobs, and backroom deals, all influencing everything about her. Now, this is the classic system is rigged defense. But with Lori Daybell, it has a spin that's a little different because instead of simply arguing that errors were made, a legitimate appellate kind of argument, Lori painted the entire American justice system as corrupt, hostile, hostile to her spirituality and a system that made her a pawn of evil forces. Then she used this premise to rationalize not calling her family as witnesses, not testifying herself, and not offering any defense at all. So I needed to get out of the way of the business owners here trying to go about starting their day. Now, listen, when what Lori was really doing here is preemptively framing her next trial's failures as inevitable. The system is always going to convict me, is kind of her angle. She's making herself a martyr figure rather than a defendant, and she's laying psychological groundwork for an appeal based on a denial of a fair trial. So even if it's completely unfounded, she's laying a strategy. So the second of my 10 abominations is, thou shalt blame the judicial system for thy own sins. Remember, Lori wept, not over the dead, but over the inconvenience of court rules, evidence, restrictions, and judges who wouldn't let her testify about the spirit world. Yeah, Lori. And gravity, by the way, is precluding you from flying. It's called reality. Now, in the third abomination, that's her decision to self-represent. I mean, this was an ego trip in disguise. When Brianna Whitney asked her if she regretted representing herself, Lori didn't even hesitate. She said no. Why? Because it let her control the courtroom. It let her preach her narrative directly without a defense attorney filtering her, and it allowed her to emotionally and spiritually grandstand. Not legally defend, but grandstand. She didn't want a defense, she wanted a pulpit. And I had to move locations here because these business owners are trying to get started. But now, listen, when Daybell talks about preparing for her next trial, the attempted murder case against Brandon Boudreaux, she hinted that she'll use the same approach: speed, martyrdom, all of that equals spiritual defiance. This isn't a strategy to win a trial, it's a strategy to win souls, the inmates and the media, in my opinion. Maybe even a few disillusioned jurors. So the third of my 10 abominations is, thou shalt fashion thyself into a jailhouse prophet. You see, her goal is to be appointed to lead the new congregation of wrongfully accused women. So when you listen to that interview, remember her words. I'm here to help the women be courageous and stand up for themselves. There you have it, folks. When your cult collapses on the outside, simply franchise a new one behind bars. And the fourth abomination is Lori the martyr versus the reality of Lori the manipulator. Throughout the interview, Lori leaned hard into the persecutory delusion that she had about this isn't justice, it's spiritual warfare. She said, I'm helping the women in jail be courageous. And that classic, even if they convict me, it has zero effect on me in eternity. Well, psychologically, this accomplishes three things. Number one, it protects her ego, convincing herself that she's never wrong. It's the system that deflects guilt, not the criminal. She's the victim of corrupt forces, and it reinforces her grandiosity. She isn't just an inmate, she's a leader, a teacher, a divine messenger. This is the same psychological profile that Lori showed while conspiring with Chad Daybell. Delusions of grandeur, religious justifications for horrific acts, and deep resentment toward anybody who's opposing her authority. And now she's rolling that same dangerous narrative into the Brandon Boudreaux case, gearing up not to defend herself, but to preach her innocence. Thus, the fourth of her 10 abominations is, Thou shalt fashion thyself into a martyr. You see, Lori wasn't trying to win her case. She was trying to win a following. She wasn't defending herself in court. She was delivering sermons from her jailhouse podium, her pulpit, fueled not by truth, but by her unshakable delusions of spiritual superiority. Well, hey, folks, I'm in Ephesus now, and I'm trying to wrap up this video while I'm on vacation. But the fifth abomination is the return of the jailhouse preacher. You see, when Lori started talking about helping the other women in the jail, remember that, standing up for them, being courageous, and recognizing the system was bogging these women down, it wasn't just small talk. It was a chilling return to form. Lori was casting herself once again as a spiritual leader, a prison prophet, ready to help her new congregation. This isn't just survival behind bars. It's evangelism through manipulation. The same kind of tactics she used to gather believers outside of jail walls, but now transplanted into a captive audience. Cults often find fertile ground in prison settings, offering hope, secret knowledge, and belonging in exchange for loyalty. Lori's cult collapsed outside, but she's already starting to franchise inside. Thus, the fifth of her 10 abominations. Thou shalt preach false hope to the captives and deceive them with thine own delusions. You see, Lori isn't just a prisoner. She's a recruiter, and her new congregation, it's a jail full of broken, desperate souls looking for any whisper of hope, even if it's poisoned hope. Now, the sixth abomination is the striking manic energy that shows that her mask is really slipping. You see, one of the most striking things about Lori's demeanor during the interview was her manic undertone. She hopped from spiritual topics to legal topics without warning, sprinkling in jokes, green chili enchiladas, and childhood nicknames, all while talking about betrayal, death, and imprisonment. She smiled, she joked, she sped up, and in doing so, she betrayed herself. Now, this is all my opinion, but it was a mask of her calm, divine authority cracking under pressure. Psychologically, this manic presentation serves two purposes. First, it disarms the audience. She's laughing, so she must not be dangerous. But it hides her panic. It's racing ahead so fast that no one can catch the fear and guilt that seeps through the cracks. This manic defense mechanism is common in pathological narcissists and under extreme stress, flooding the room with charm, wit, and chaos to confuse and soften judgment. It's a desperate bid to outrun reality. Thus, I want to put down her sixth of her 10 abominations. Thou shalt not cloak madness with mirth, nor mask thy guilt with laughter. In the end, Lori wasn't laughing because she was free of guilt. She was laughing because she was trapped, and she knew it. Now, the seventh abomination is those stinking green chili enchiladas, the symbol of Lori's delusional disconnect, in my opinion. There was, in there, in the middle of this trial, a trial involving dead children, a dead lover's wife, and now a dead husband. A trial that was filled with conspiracies and shattered families. And in the middle of that, Lori decides it's important to bring up green chili enchiladas during cross-examination with her brother Adam. Why? Because in Lori's mind, the courtroom is just another stage. Humor and personal moments can disarm witnesses and jurors, and she still believes that she can wink and charm people and get her way out of serious consequences. The chili green enchilada comment symbolized her total disconnect from reality. It showed that even in the middle of fighting for her life, Lori still prioritized control of the narrative and emotional manipulation over the basic courtroom survival skills that are needed. It's kind of like an arsonist who jokes about how warm the fire is while the building is still burning. there's there's just absolutely no emotional resonance because for Lori, it's always about her performance, not about the reality that's happening around her. And in this instance, and in court, Lori hoped that getting Adam to smile on the stand would reassert her emotional dominance over him. It was a flat out denial of reality. Humor to Lori was a way to pretend that betrayal, pain, and death doesn't matter. You see, if they can still laugh, he tells herself anyway this, that everything was normal. If he wasn't seeking reconciliation, he was seeking control. And that laugh would have been a crack in the wall, a proof that she still owned a piece of Adam's
What was
emotions.
it like facing your brother for the first time in years?
Yeah, that's a good question. It all happened so fast. I'm still really kind of processing. I mean, yesterday was the first day I slept in like 3 weeks or so. So today I slept into a little bit, and I knew you guys were coming. I was like, I better get up because, I knew you guys were coming. But it was different than I thought.
Did you think that your interactions with Adam were positive between the two of you in the courtroom?
I didn't really think anything at the time. I was trying to be in just lawyer mode and kind of do my job at the time. It's hard because you have, being your own attorney, right? You're obviously emotional, and women were obviously more emotional than the men who get up and do it. But I tried to mostly be in attorney mode and try to stick to that.
Well, and that's an interesting point because I think the difference that we saw with you versus if you had an attorney was sometimes there were personal aspects. For example, the green chili chicken enchiladas. Right. That became a huge part of this that I don't think anybody had on their bingo card that was going to be part of this trial. But obviously an attorney would not have started going into that. Why bring that up, and what was that interaction between you and Adam like?
So, I don't know. I mean, it was different when it was up there with him because, you've known him your whole life. I was going to come in and say, I'm funny. I'm always doing movie lines. Our whole family is like that. We're big on movie lines. Like Summer and I will text back and forth in total movie lines without any words ever that are our own, just quoting back and forth. And so I wanted to come in and ask Adam, who is Ernest T. Watson? And see what his reaction would be. Because there's no way he couldn't laugh,
No, but he seemed annoyed on the stand.
Yeah, well, he would laugh because that was the name that he called himself when we used to play school when we were little growing up. That was like his nerdy name for school when we played school. So I thought that would be funny. But I was trying to be, it's obviously a serious situation, but it's hard with my own family to be serious because we're really a joking family. And so.
Would you call you and Adam estranged though now?
Not really necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is similar to abusers who use inside jokes to destabilize or manipulate victims even during confrontation, reminding them that the past bonds weaken present resistance. But Adam didn't laugh, and he held strong in the witness chair, and that was a bigger blow to Lori than even the guilty verdict, in my opinion. So let's call this seventh abomination, thou shalt not feast in the ashes of thine own destruction. Now, this section of the trial and post-conviction interview was so irritating to me that I'm dedicating another abomination to it. So I'm going to call the eighth abomination betrayal at its ultimate. Lori's inappropriate and emotional manipulation kind of shows how she prioritized her performance over the reality, even when on trial for murder. I mean, when you think of her attack on that Nancy Joe woman who was having dinner with Charles Vallow the night before he was murdered, in that you see Lori calling out Nancy Joe that she's carrying on with Charles behind her back. Now, of course, in Lori's mind, even though she's carrying on with Chad Daybell, hers was whole and pure because Chad was just her, quote, best friend. Let's watch that clip.
I don't think it bothered me that much. I think it surprised me because I wasn't aware of any of that until we got the discovery.
You did not know he was dating other women.
No.
But you were having the affair with Chad Daybell, so how does that
You can
work?
say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
At the time?
Yes.
But then you got married a few months later.
Correct.
So you were just friends, according to you, with Chad before Charles' death.
Correct.
And then only romantic things started after Charles' death.
Correct.
Do you still to this day believe that Charles was a dark spirit, a possessed spirit named Ned?
That's a whole thing that has been way misconstrued.
Can you clear it up?
Probably not in the 5 minutes we have left.
Yeah, this was all about moral superiority. Lori reframed her own emotional affair and later marriage to Chad as pure and spiritual, while she characterizes Charles' adult dating life as something shameful or immoral. She wanted the jury, and now this post-conviction interview audience, to forget that she was engaged in a deeply intimate, clandestine affair with Chad Daybell while she was still married, including these religiously tinged discussions about removing dark spirits. She was pushing her own betrayals as something holy, and then saying Charles was really a skank for going out with this girl and having dinner with her. In Lori's universe, everything she does is righteous, and everything others do threatens her worldview of what is wicked. So let's give abomination number 8 the title, Thou shalt not sanctify thy sins with the tongue of angels. Nobody, not the police, not the jurors, not grieving families, can understand Lori's celestial knowledge. Remember her comment, we both went to heaven and we both had that experience, this experience she talked about at the beginning. When you alone speak spiritual world language, why bother with English? So the ninth abomination, narcissism. Lori and Chad as divine beings. One of the most nauseating segments of this interview came when Lori talked about her spiritual bond with Chad Daybell. She stressed that both she and Chad had near life experiences, and therefore they understood spiritual things that nobody else could comprehend. In this, she's not just claiming spiritual insight, she's setting herself apart as godlike. She subtly implies that jurors, police, prosecutors, and even family members aren't qualified to judge her. This is a continuation of her long pattern of seeing herself as a celestial being, someone who's lived many lives, holds special spiritual powers, and is being tasked with missions that others can't even fathom. It's classic narcissism, a messiah complex, and it's one where I'm glad that the only person that understands what's going on is Lori Daybell. I'm glad that they're the special ones, and I'm really glad I'm among the rest of society that views this spiritually ignorant or evil act as what it is, abhorrent. This was Lori Vallow Daybell seeing herself as a god walking among mortals, even after a jury of those mortals unanimously found her guilty of conspiring to kill her husband. Now I'm really on fire, so let's call this ninth abomination, thou shalt not exalt thyself above the heavens, lest thou be like a lightning from the sky cracking down. Which brings us to abomination number 10, Lori's final claim about the stacked system. At the very end of her interview, Lori drove home one more poisonous narrative, that the American justice system is rigged to convict people. She challenged the reporter, Brianna Whitney, directly saying, hey, do you know the percentage that get acquitted? Because I'll bet you it's less than 1%. Well, to Lori, the fact that so few defendants are acquitted wasn't a reflection of strong evidence. It was proof that the system is correct. But here's the reality. Acquittals are rare. Not because the system is unfair to defendants. It's because prosecutors are ethically bound to only bring charges when they believe they have enough admissible evidence to convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt. In fact, as explained by experts on the website Nolo Press, prosecutors generally bring charges only when they believe they have enough evidence to prove a defendant's guilty. If prosecutors are not confident in the strength of their evidence, they often decline to file charges or they offer favorable plea deals. So here's the transparent translation to people like Lori Daybell. Prosecutors screen cases carefully. Weak cases simply are not charged. I mean, think about the county dropping charges in Charles Vallow's death against Chad Daybell. Many of you think it should have happened. I think it should have happened, but they didn't have enough evidence. Trials typically need really strong evidence, and that's why the convictions outnumber acquittals. Now, Lori's claim about acquittal rates is just another manipulation.
You tell me what you think he's going to do, Brianna.
Well,
You think he's going to say, nope, no 404B, we're not going to let any of that stuff in? I mean,
the judge was relatively patient with you, I thought, throughout the trial.
did you feel that?
Well,
No,
I
did
think he
not
was
feel
helping
like
you.
that.
One more. Given that you were just found guilty, and I know you don't like the jail conditions, would you change your plea in Brandon's trial?
No.
Why?
Will I change it? No. Because I didn't do anything. So, no, you have to, there comes a point when you just have to stand up, regardless of what they do to you, right? Like, this will have zero effect on me in eternity. Zero effect on me in eternity. And I already know that. So, I'm here to help whatever women I can help, and here be courageous and stand up for themselves, because it's a system that bogs you down. These women are bogged down. They've been here for years. They've been treated horrible in this situation, and they've been treated horrible by their own attorneys. You know, they've been treated like, okay, they've been here for 8, 9, 10 years waiting to go to trial, when the conditions at the prison, even if they got convicted, are a million times better than they are right here. So I'm helping them to stand up and be courageous. You know, if you didn't do it, you just get up and say you didn't do it. If they convict you because that's the way the law works, then they're going to convict you because that's the way the law works. It is designed to convict you. It is not designed to acquit you. And I want you to look this up, and I want you to tell me next time we talk, how many people in Maricopa County in a murder case get acquitted? I want to know the percentage. Get acquitted.
I'll look it up.
Because I bet you it's like less than 1%.
It's not.
Another attempt to paint herself as a persecuted martyr instead of an individual whose own criminal behavior brought her down. Which leads me to my final abomination. Thou shalt not cry persecution when judgment is but the harvest of thy deeds. You see, at the end of her interview, Lori Daybell tried to drive one more poisonous narrative home, that the American justice system is corrupt. It's stacked against defendants. Well, it is stacked against defendants because they're not going to file a charge unless they have enough evidence. But here's the reality, and it's starkly different. Lori's whining about the acquittal rates was just another manipulation tactic, another desperate attempt to paint herself as a persecuted martyr rather than an accountable criminal. Her downfall wasn't because the system was unfair. It was because for once in her life, reality had the last word, and no amount of gaslighting is going to save her. So I want to thank Brianna Whitney for getting that great interview. Even though it nauseated me, Daybell did what Daybell does. She preached and she tried to manipulate. She revealed not only her contempt for the legal system, but also her ongoing dangerous delusions of religious superiority. This wasn't a woman preparing for prison life. This was a woman gearing up for her next battle in courtrooms, in the media, and in the minds of anyone who's still willing to believe that she's a martyr instead of a murderer. She wasn't just manic. She was manic with a mission. And she wasn't just preaching. She was recruiting. And she wasn't just rationalizing. She was rewriting reality in real time. And now, as she faces her next trial involving Brandon Boudreaux, we'll once again see her paint herself as the victim, even as the evidence piles up that she was and remains the architect of devastating homicidal crimes. And that, my friends, is exactly why I keep watching, and I think you keep watching, this tragic train wreck in slow motion. It's because Lori Daybell isn't done yet, not by a long shot. So as I wrap things up here in Ephesus, Turkey, I want to review the 10 abominations of Lori Daybell's case. Number 1, thou shalt not cloak thy crimes in religious righteousness. Abomination number 2, thou shalt blame the judicial system for thine own sins. Number 3, thou shalt fashion thyself into a jailhouse prophet. Number 4, thou shalt fashion thyself into a martyr and cry foul at thy just condemnation. Number 5, thou shalt preach false hope to the captives and deceive them with thine own delusions. Abomination number 6, thou shalt not cloak madness with mirth, nor mask thy guilt with laughter. Number 7, thou shalt not feast in the ashes of thine own destruction. Number 8, thou shalt not sanctify thy sins with the tongues of angels. Abomination number 9, thou shalt not exalt thyself above the heavens, lest thou fall like lightning from the sky. And number 10, thou shalt not cry persecution when judgment is but the harvest of thy deeds. And that's it for today, folks, from Ephesus. You can see, and if you look up about Ephesus and Turkey, cats and dogs roam the street freely and wildly. People feed them. They come up. They associate, apparently like this cat's associating. But in the mosques, they actually allow the cats to come in the mosques, although they don't allow the dogs to come in. But anyway, drop your thoughts in the comments below because I'd really love to hear from you and get your take on this case. Don't be shy about jumping into the conversation with other people either. And please remember, be kind, be constructive. And thanks for watching Profiling Evil. I really appreciate your support. So be sure to follow along with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter for more updates, insights, and behind the scenes content. And if you like audio podcasts on the go, subscribe to Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And folks, if you're hungry for more true crime, go over to profilingevil.com and check out our interactive story maps and a whole bunch of other content. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the BOLO, our exclusive digital newsletter. It's the best way to get insider updates straight to your inbox. And if you love true crime books, check out Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. It's about my investigation into and my ultimate takedown of one of America's most disturbing cults. Now, you might also like She Knew No Fear, the story of my great-great-grandmother's 1891 murder and how I solved that crime a century later. You can get signed and personalized copies on the website if you live in the United States. I'll just ship them to you for free. Otherwise, just purchase them through Amazon.com worldwide. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.